See, I bought a new one for this one, so I don't have to walk over there when I'm at the drill press. I am so lazy.
Sam's Garage, presented by Hemsaw. On this episode of Sam's Garage, the Lokar team helped Sam install the ignition coils and spark plug wires in the '68 Chevelle. Sam and Doug review their plans to start building the new chassis for the '57 Ford Thunderbird. Sam makes a call to Hypertech to juice up this already wild Polaris UTV. Then Sam installs a new set of Brodix aluminum cylinder heads on a '68 Camaro. Travis and Kevin help Sam strategically mount the ignition coils and spark plug wires in the '68 Chevelle. The new location for the ignition coils will help keep things clean under the hood, while that LS Classic Series from Lokar provides that old school, nostalgic look.
This LS engine looks so good in the Chevelle, but we're gonna make it look old school by adding some classic look with a simulated LS Classic distributor and the plug wires to make it look like an old school big block. Those valve covers really fool you.
Yeah, this is basically a wire conduit, so we can take the plug wires from the plugs down through this distributor, simulated.
Right.
So it gives it just another one of those little touches that kind of draws your eye away from this being an LS.
That's gonna add so much look to this with those four runners being independent of each other, that old classic big block look and those valve covers and that classic air cleaner. With that, finishes it all off.
Just make sure we get the firing order right.
No problem, we'll get that right. So a good idea when mounting your coils is you want the coils down here to correspond with your cylinders. That's gonna make it easier for you to route your ignition wires. So we got evens on the passenger side, odds on the driver's side, front one corresponds to the front cylinder, back one's the back. That'll make it easy for the wires. So what Travis and I are doing right now is we're labeling the ignition wires before we send them up top so that we know exactly what 7531, 8642 is on that side. All right, so now Travis has all the ignition wires up from the bottom. We have labeled them, just like you saw us do down there. They're nice and tight so they can go through the cap, place the cap right there. Now there's two ways you can do it. You can go firing order and make it look legit, old school, or you can do a little symmetry and go 4 on one side, 4 on the other side. Depends on what you prefer it look like. Now we're gonna put the simulated boots for the distributor side of our spark plug wires. Don't forget, you're gonna have to go in backwards. You're gonna go in through the front and out the back. And you're gonna need some sort of silicone grease to be able to help you do this part of the job. We are at the stage where we're gonna be cutting the spark plug end of our wires. And this is where you wanna make a decision on whether you want it to go over the valve cover or route it behind the head. And that's really up to you how you want it to look. So we got the boots on the distributor cap. We got our boots down here for the spark plug wire. We're gonna kind of take a measurement here. Don't forget that when you're cutting this, the boot will slide down. So when you're measuring, you wanna measure the end of the wire on the spark plug itself where the connector is gonna live. Once you have that measurement, you're gonna cut it, and then we're gonna terminate them. We should be good to go. Now, do not forget the dielectric grease on the spark plug side. You saw us put it down there on the coil side. That's for corrosion because it's under the car for weather reasons. Up here, you wanna do it so that this spark plug boot does not stick. So in the future, you wanna change out your spark plugs, you don't have to change out the wires. I love the way it looks. I love the symmetry left and right. I know it's not the correct firing order look, but to me that looks much better. Now, in the past, we'd have to worry about bunching up these ignition wires together.
Yeah, these are super high quality wires. They're 40 ohms per foot. They outperform the factory wires, so you're not gonna have any issues with interference. You can run wire looms however you want to do.
Awesome. What we're gonna do here, where it goes across the exhaust, we're gonna use some DEI wrap. We're gonna put some DEI spark plug boots in for the spark plugs to keep the runners from destroying them. It's gonna look really nice.
As a finishing touch, if you've got a coil laying around, you don't need it obviously on this LS, but you could mount it here. We include a coil wire with the kit. You should plug it in, mount your coil wherever you'd want. In this case, I think we'll just put this on there for now.
Because you have a breather style coil, correct?
That's right, and we'll hook that up to the valley plate and
that's awesome.
Let it breathe.
It's really coming along. As you can see, we've got most of it done under here, and then we'll go on to the Holley EFI. Let's go.
Sam's Garage, presented by Hemsaw. Sam and Doug prep to start building the new chassis for the 57 Ford Thunderbird. They walk us through all the new steering and suspension parts that will be included. Building the chassis straight and square is important to ensure the car tracks and performs correctly when back on the road.
Doug and I are ready for the important part, lots of measuring. We're about ready to build the chassis for our 57 Thunderbird, and this is going to be exciting. Now, what kind of process are you going to be taking to do this?
Well, the first thing we have to do is we've got to make sure that we've got a very level platform that we're building off of it. So what I have here is one of our roller tables, and I'm able to adjust it. I'm able to do everything in the XY axis to make sure everything is level. I've got a precision level up here, so I'm checking both of my axes because it's very important when we put everything on. We want to make sure our pickup points are in the right places with our suspension arms. So if everything was at an angle or if it wasn't flat, it could create a lot of problems. So we're going to work everything off of here.
That is very smart. This is very heavy duty too. I like it.
Yeah, it's not going to go anywhere.
Now check out all the parts on the floor here. This thing's gonna ride so nice when it's all done. We're updating everything, even the rack and pinion steering. It came with a 9-inch rear end, but we went to Moser and we're gonna do a lot stronger 9-inch. That's gonna handle all the horsepower that the Coyote's gonna put out. Now in the front, as you can see, the suspension from the factory was really bad. Tubular upper and lower control arms.
Well, Sam, remember, it wasn't bad. It was period correct,
That's
which
true.
wasn't really good.
There you go. That's a good point right there. We got adjustable coilovers, adjustable shocks. We're going, like I said, to a rack and pinion steering. Everything came from Scott's Hot Rods and Customs. Justin stopped everything he was doing to make this for us in record time, along with Moser as well. That's very cool.
Yeah, no, we got to give them a huge shout out because, you know, as we put everything together, they really stepped up and put us into a position where we can put everything together on this project.
So Doug, what exactly would you measure? Where would you start to build a chassis?
Well, what we're going to do, Sam, is we're going to start from our center. We're going to have a center line in both of our X and our Y axis. Start measuring out from our center. We'll measure all the way along on our frame so we know what our widths are going to be.
The arches in the back and the front.
Absolutely, the arches. Then we'll also be double checking since we've got to set our rear end. We're going to want to take a look at what our wheelbase is. So that has to be correct. And then we'll also be checking the track on the car. So we'll have all of these different measurements. That's why it's so critical to start with everything from a really level platform. Because if this isn't level and we don't have our pickup points right, then this can absolutely crab as it goes on down the road. After we have all the measurements, we've already got a rough layout of what our chassis is going to look like. We'll put in all of our measurements in here, and we're doing 3D modeling on. So we can take a look at on the 3D model, and if we want to, we can even put on a set of virtual reality headsets.
Goggles, yep.
Yep.
So right here is where Joe put the pieces that's going to be for the new front clip that's going on, right?
That's correct. So we'll have to take a look at where's the front clip going to be to make sure everything is set.
That is going to be cool.
Yeah, but you got to start from your center point, because if we go from our center and we work our way out, we'll know exactly where we're at. If you go from one end to another, you can do it, but it's just a lot more work.
I agree. And this is very important. We got a lot of money in this chassis, a lot of good parts are going on it. The last thing we want to do is mess up the measurement, mess up the chassis, and then dog track down the road. That's when the rear doesn't match the front. When you're going down the road, it messes up your alignment, your steering, your handling, and your tires. We don't want that.
No, we don't. You know, to make sure everything is correct, I got our inspector.
All right, changing your battery is pretty easy, but there are a few things you need to know in order to keep yourself safe and in order to keep the terminals and the battery charged up. One of them is you guys don't want to create an arc like this. When removing the battery, you always start with removing the negative cable first, because if you touch the negative to the body, nothing's going to happen. Okay, so you remove the negative first, then the positive. When you put the battery back on, you put the positive on first, because with the negative not connected, you will never arc the battery, okay? But then when you put the negative on, you have a complete circuit and you can arc it. If you do it in this step, you'll have no problems. And always remember that when you're doing your battery swap, take a tool like this. Even though it's a new battery, clean the post on both the battery and the terminal, giving yourself fresh metal. That way when you connect the two together, the voltage from the alternator will make it better to the battery and keep it charged up.
Now back to more Sam's Garage.
Sam teams up with Hypertech to take this already modified Polaris RZR Turbo S to the next level. The Spectrum tuner from Hypertech will unlock another 42 wheel horsepower to this UTV. With the extra power to help protect the driver and vehicle, Sam will also be including new interior padding as well as suspension limiting straps.
It's absolutely amazing the components they've added on these vehicles. A lot of high-end parts on them. Maybe that's why they're so reliable and popular today. This one belongs to Craig. He's the owner of Iron Mountain Resort right here in Dahlonega, Georgia. Now this thing has 6,000 miles on it. It's actually gone on the Continental Divide 2,700 miles straight with those O-bore tires. Looks like they did a good job holding up. Now what I'm going to do to this, as you can see, it's got aftermarket control arms, nice aftermarket suspension. What we're going to do is we went to Hypertech. They've gotten big into the UTV game. We're going to add a Spectrum tuner, which is going to give us 42 horsepower. We're going to add bags on the inside. And those bags double as pads for your knee and elbow on the door, and they have a pocket in the middle that's zipped and flapped for added protection and keeping everything dry. We also got limit straps for the suspension. Now, this one has wider control arms, aftermarket suspension. I'll be able to put the limit straps in no problem. But if you guys have a factory setup, it's going to be more narrow. The rear straps aren't going to clear the factory wheels, so you may have to get new aftermarket wheels, or you can very easily get the bolt-on spacers like they have for automotive applications and make those straps work in your application. So the good thing about the limit straps is that it's going to limit the travel when you guys are actually in the air, taking the stress off of the shock itself. Does a really good job. The longer nuts, they're going to come with the spacers. That's going to get the limit strap up off the coilover. And you can see that the strap is pretty much the length of the coilover fully extended. So you go off of the jump, you get airborne, that limit strap is going to save the coilover because of all this tension that's going to be on it from the suspension falling down. These things are $2,000 to $5,000 a corner, so you really want to try to save them as best you can. All right, now it's time for the fun part. Anytime you add horsepower to any vehicle, it's always going to be fun, especially on something this small. We're going to make 42 horsepower because we got a turbo model. Now the connection on these vehicles is going to be underneath the hood. So we're going to open the plastic, pull the hood up and forward, and just like any other Hypertech system, you're going to go in there and you're going to answer the questions. Now this unit does double as a diagnostic code reader as well, so if you guys got any engine codes, you can go in there and use it to read them, clear them, diagnose the car. We're going to go to tuning, we're going to hit select, preset tune. You can do custom tunes. We're going to go to a preset tune. All right, so what it's going to do now is it's going to read the file that's in the computer. You don't want to disturb it when you're reading the file. You want to make sure all the accessories, the lights are all turned off so you're not using any of the battery's power. And then you're going to basically follow the instructions. So we're going to do engine tuning, and we're going to go stage 3. and RG means race gas, all right? Stage 1, 2, and 3, pretty much 87 to 93 octane gas. The RG is for race gas. Now, if you're gonna use that, you have to go and run E85 or off-road race fuel so you don't have any detonation. It is a turbo car. If you don't do that, you'll put a hole in the piston. We're all done. I got the tuner off. I've got the factory connector plugged back in. Now we're gonna put the hood back on. Now I just added 42 horsepower to this vehicle at the wheels. That's a lot considering the size of it, considering how much horsepower we started with. Very impressive numbers. And that's because this is a turbo model. You're gonna get a little bit less if you have a non-turbo model, but you're still gonna make a lot of horsepower. All right, I got this Turbo S Razor completely Hypertech out. Next time Craig goes to the Continental Divide, he's gonna have 42 more wheel horsepower, he's gonna have limiting straps, saving his suspension, and he's gonna have extra storage and protection on the interior. And if you guys want all this stuff for your Razor, go check out hypertech.com.
Sam's Garage, presented by Hemsaw. Sam installs a new set of Brodix aluminum cylinder heads on this 68 Camaro. The cylinder heads are a perfect addition to the big block engine in the Camaro. Not only will the new heads provide more horsepower, they'll also shave 100 pounds off the weight of the engine.
That's one beautiful 68 Camaro. 454 big block Gen 6 engine. Now LS engines have been very popular for over a decade now, but the big block isn't going anywhere. We're gonna be installing a set of aluminum cylinder heads from Brodix. They've been known for this for over 65 years now. What we have here is a big block race right ready 24 angle head. It has 119 cc combustion chambers, 230 intake valve, 183 exhaust valve. The ports on the exhaust are designed to go into the factory location, so these are direct bolt-on. All the components are gonna transfer over from your factory heads onto these. It has a 298 cc intake port, flows 415 CFM. Now these heads are designed for a 600 lift max camshaft. Make sure to read your labels and make sure all your components are compatible with each other. Now this is gonna make horsepower right out of the box, and it's gonna save us 100 pounds. The bowls have been cleaned inside, that's where we're gonna get a lot of power, and the intake ports have been opened up and smoothed out. Oil today is scarce and way more expensive. So this oil in here is about 500 miles old. I wanna keep it. And what I did was drain the radiator, drain both sides of the block per the plug. Took the plug out, make sure you retape it. But on the passenger side, you gotta pull the dipstick out first. That's gonna leave a hole exposed right to the oil pan. So you wanna make sure to put a rubber cap over it while you're servicing your block plug. Get the coolant out, put the plug back in, then you can pull the rubber plug off the oil dipstick on the oil pan. Then I'm gonna raise the engine up because I gotta get that header off so I can get to the head bolts on the driver's side. So due to the type of gaskets that they use from the factory, you can see that they pretty much work like tape. So you gotta put a lot of leverage on that cylinder head to get it off the block. When you do that, put the pry bar in the coolant passage, not the intake passage, damaging anything in the cylinder head. When you have everything off, double check and make sure that the dowel pins for the heads remain in the block. If not, remove them from the old head because you're gonna be transferring them onto the new heads. Then pull the gaskets off. First take a razor blade and get all the material off first. Okay, razor blade does a very good job. Then go back and use an abrasive pad or anything else besides a hard abrasive pad that you're gonna be taking metal away, warping the deck of the block, causing a future head gasket issue. Anytime I do a head job, I always go back with ARP bolts or studs. This being a street car, I'm gonna put bolts in it. You got integrity, you got peace of mind, and you can reuse the bolts, unlike the factory bolts where every time you take them off, you gotta throw them away. These have about 2 or 3 times you can use them. Third time you wanna check it with a stretch gauge, but that's what ARP is all about. Integrity and peace of mind. Okay, so the Brodix heads are bolted in place. You gotta be careful, pay attention, because 2 of the long bolts are gonna be slightly shorter that go on the last 2 holes on top. Then you got 4 bolts that are shorter. You can totally tell where they go. All you gotta do is put the air cleaner on. Hopefully the hood will close. We'll see. All right, now that it runs, I can put the coolant back in it. I always put that in last just in case there's issues, and there's always those issues. You don't want a big mess. So those Brodix heads not only look good, they're gonna perform well, shaved 100 pounds off the front of the car, and I could have used all my stock parts, but this was the perfect opportunity to further upgrade the engine bay and make it look as good as those heads will perform.